2 Point Hospital is a management simulation game where you're placed in control of building and running a hospital. It's currently a PC exclusive, although in a community FAQ on Steam, the developers, 2 Point Studios, said decisions on additional platforms will be made at a later date. So that's not a no, but console gamers might be waiting a while. Published in partnership with Sega, the game was released through Steam on the 30th of August. 2 Point Studios is made up of a bunch of veteran developers that worked on some of my favourite games, the movies, Fable, Theme Park, and of course Theme Hospital. It should come as no surprise then that 2 Point Hospital is seen as the spiritual successor to Theme Hospital. EA have been freely giving away Theme Hospital through their Origin platform every few months for years now. And while the nostalgia drew me back on a couple of occasions, the game is just so dated and clunky, I've never been able to stick with it. When 2 Point Hospital was announced earlier this year in January, I was lining up to board the hype train, and I wasn't alone. Turns out a lot of my friends grew up on Theme Hospital too. Good simulation tycoon-like games made popular in the 90s have been few and far between in recent years. Prison Architect is perhaps the standout example, with a lot of other games being very light on the management aspects. Planet Coaster, City Skylines, and Jurassic World Evolution, which all look great visually, but fall short in various ways for a lot of players. The first thing to note is that 2 Point Hospital is less than half the recommended retail price of the recently released Jurassic World Evolution, and many retailers have knocked even more off this price, treating it as a loss leader to bring customers in. In what might be a first, the developers even discussed the price discrepancies between retailers in a Steam post, reassuring customers that these lower priced offerings are still legitimate, but that some retailers had chosen to absorb the cost. I myself managed to pick up a pre-purchase for a little over £15 some 6 weeks before launch. I'm happy enough to take a gamble on a game at that price, and I'm a little bit hooked, so I think I made a good choice. The game starts you off with a basic building and a fairly comprehensive tutorial on how to build rooms, place items, and hire staff. These three simple aspects are all you need to start building your hospital empire. To begin with, you build a reception desk, hire an assistant to staff it, then perhaps set up a few benches for your patients to sit on while they wait. The next step is building a GP's office and hiring a doctor. Rooms need to be a minimum size, but can be expanded to be as big as you like. A larger room can hold more items, but also increases the prestige of a room, leading to happier staff and patients. After visiting the GP, the patient will either be sent for further diagnosis or be diagnosed and sent for treatment. Every interaction a patient has with one of your services earns you money, and curing patients increases your reputation. Failing to cure a patient will have the opposite effect. These are the basics, and they're simple to learn, with new illnesses requiring new treatment rooms. Staff have differing levels of competence, and a skill slot for every level of experience. A doctor with high diagnosis skills would be better suited to a GP's office, whereas one with high treatment skills might work best on the final steps of a patient's journey. Some rooms require specific skills, such as psychiatry, whereas others need a nurse rather than a doctor, for example the pharmacy or the ward. Every hospital, starting with your first foray into 2 Point County, requires you to complete specific tasks. You start each hospital with a goal of reaching 1 star and unlocking the next hospital. At this point you have the option to move on, or stay and build on your success, achieving more stars and eventually reaching the maximum of 3 stars. From here you can continue to play further with no more rewards, or you can move on to the next hospital to face a series of new challenges. Each hospital is more complex than the last, with the list of illnesses and available rooms increasing at every stage. Once you're settled in, new features present themselves. A training room, for example, allows you to pass knowledge and skills from one staff member to a number of their colleagues. Placing doctors in research facilities allow you to unlock new rooms to help with diagnosis, or treatment rooms for newly discovered illnesses. A marketing department staffed by assistants can improve the hospital reputation, or encourage new patients with specific illnesses. Particularly useful if one of your tasks is to cure a number of patients with a specific illness. There are, of course, a number of other ancillary rooms from the beginning. Staff rooms are important to allow staff to rest and improve morale, with options to keep janitors or assistants separate from medical staff if you'd like. Toilets are needed to allow patients and staff alike to relieve themselves. These can be set to unisex, male, female, staff, or patient only. The beginning of every new hospital allows some leeway, but the consequences of not building toilets quickly become evident. Judging by the total number of stars shown in the Steam achievements, I'm about a third of the way into the game with just under 20 hours playtime. Given that the first few hospitals were tutorial heavy and completed inside of an hour each, and my current hospital has taken me quite a few hours including my first failure and restart, I'm expecting the game to run well into 50 hours before 3-starring everything. That's pretty good value for a £15 entry point. I feel as if my first failure was an important one. Growing each hospital steadily is vital, particularly if one of the tasks involves achieving a good profit margin. Queues were long, so I decided to double my treatment prices for a quick boost. But a large number of patients refused to pay for treatment, and my hospital reputation took a huge hit. Even though I slowly reduced the prices again, the reputation struggled to recover, and I was running at a loss. I couldn't recover from this, and after a couple of years in debt, 28 days of every month, I tried to cut some staff. Although my wage bill dipped, so did my income, and I eventually went bankrupt. For anyone wondering, bankruptcy is finishing a month at minus $300,000. While I'm happy to admit my failings and take ownership of this particular incident, it touches on a wider issue of GP overuse during the flow of treatment. Patients arrive, see a GP, go for diagnosis, back to the GP for results, then back out to diagnosis, again to the GP, and hopefully at this stage there's enough to go on to give the patient a cure. If there isn't, the patient continues bouncing between the two until there is a diagnosis or they rage quit. Because a GP is required so often, queues quickly balloon. It's a common issue, but one that really starts to get unmanageable as you see more patients. There are workarounds and exploitative solutions such as filling diagnosis rooms with medicine cabinets that give diagnosis boosts, but it's unsightly and I don't think it's intended gameplay. This particular aspect of the game affects many of the tasks too. Reaching level 5 prestige in a staff room, for example, often means filling it with rose bushes, hitting the goal, getting the reward, then selling all the rose bushes again. It's not fun, it's a chore and it makes little sense. Although it's gimmicky and looks ridiculous, it's the best way to keep staff and patients happy, reduce queues, and progress in the game. There are bugs that I'll cover later, but this falls into the category of poor gameplay design, and as it ties in with the queues for GPs, it's probably one of the more disappointing aspects of the game. For the solution and best practice to be completely filling rooms with stat boosting junk doesn't sit right with me. These issues only really start becoming prevalent after the first 10 hours, so while the initial experience of the game is a homage to Theme Hospital, I can't help but feel things start to fall apart once they scale up. Hearing myself, that sounds really critical, but I think it's important that the game is fair. If I fail a level, I want it to be because I did some stupid stuff, made poor decisions, poor planning, a lack of knowledge. I want to learn from my mistakes and do better next time. If doing better means a rose garden in every room, or cramming every available surface with environment boosting items, if that's the intended line between success and failure, then the game loses a lot of its magic. The more I think about it, the more it irritates me. Hospital performance is driven by staff performance, as well as the happiness of staff and their patients. It feels like such a cheap mechanic, and the game punishes you for not making every room look like an episode of Hoarders. Hopefully it's something that can be addressed and patched out as more people progress further into the game. There are other bugs that need fixing too. Patients often get stuck inside items, and while this is usually fixed by lifting and dropping the item in question, on occasion I've had to remove entire rooms, which is less than convenient if you've got a whole queue of people waiting to go in for treatment. Items being placed in rooms often look like they fit, are allowed to be placed, but then the room stops functioning and you're prompted to fix the offending item. Picking up the main machine in the room to move it can sometimes bug out and not go back down. You can't undo the pickup, so you have to sell the item for less than you paid, then buy a new one. While sounding trivial, this can be a significant expense if the item in question was a $60,000 scanning machine. Wards seem to be a little buggy too. On one occasion, I had a huge queue of patients outside, but nobody would enter, while the nurses were milling about inside, doing nothing. These are all fairly small annoyances, and I expect them to get fixed soon. Otherwise, the game is a lot of fun, and I'm finding that when I'm not playing, I'm thinking up new ways of setting up my next hospital. My expectations were high going into 2 Point Hospital, and while I don't think they've been exceeded, they've certainly been met. Aside from the humour and wordplay around illnesses and their treatments, the animations and interactions are also fun to observe. The hospital radio and tannoy are both nice audio additions to help bring the vibrant world to life. The music is relaxing, and strangely I find I'm getting Final Fantasy VII vibes from a couple of the songs. The radio DJs are entertaining and tailored slightly to each hospital, while not being too in your face. It's easy to tune out everything and just focus on running your hospital, and it's one of those games where it's suddenly 2 AM and you meant to go to bed hours ago. Aside from the gameplay issues, I've not run into many technical problems. The game loads fairly quickly, and on the high settings my system seems to run it at well above 100 FPS. There is a bit of a stutter when autosaving, and on more than one occasion I found myself being flung to the opposite end of the hospital as it saved while I was scrolling through. It's early days in the game's lifespan, so information online can be a little scarce, although in truth I feel like the game's done a good job in guiding me so far without me needing any outside help. The only time the game really stalled for a good 30 seconds was when it autosaved while awarding me with my 2-star certificate. It recovered on its own though, and it hasn't happened since. I'm playing with mouse and keyboard, and the controls are quick and easy to learn, with the vast majority of things being point and click rather than keyboard commands. Although I raised some concerns, I really do like 2 Point Hospital, and I feel with a little tweaking of the systems, it has the potential to be a classic. The early levels ease you into the game, and the UI is attractively stylized to be both simple and efficient. It does get harder as you progress, with not only more to do, but less room for mistakes. It's a laid back game, with the ability to speed up, slow down, or pause time if you need a moment to plan things out. I was really looking forward to this game, and it hasn't disappointed. For Theme Hospital veterans, this is a welcome return to the formula that stole our evenings away from us 2 decades ago. For newcomers and veterans alike, you're going to find hours of entertainment in 2 Point Hospital, and the witty one-liners from the tannoy announcer are guaranteed to put a smile on your face.
Earthquake warning, that isn't your medication.
Hey guys, thank you for watching this all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I enjoyed making it, and I've enjoyed playing 2 Point Hospital. The next video that I do should probably be Overcooked 2. I'm already more than halfway through with that one. Just need to throw some things together with the voiceover and the video editing. This time next week should be out. Thank you once again so much for watching. Have a great day.